Rain hit my face so hard it stung, each drop sharp enough to feel personal. My heels slipped slightly against the slick pavement as two security guards held my arms not roughly, not violently, but firmly enough to make it clear I was no longer one of them. Not an employee. Not even a person worth dignity. Just a liability being removed. Through the glass walls of Halcyon Dynamics Executive Lounge. I could see them, laughing, celebrating, crystal glasses raised high, catching the warm golden light inside such a cruel contrast to the cold gray storm swallowing me outside. Balloons floated near the ceiling, ridiculous and cheerful, marking the occasion. Her occasion. Vanessa Clark, my replacement. She stood at the center of it all, flawless in a tailored ivory blazer, her posture straight, her smile perfectly measured, the kind of smile that belonged in magazines, not in the wreckage of someone else's career. People gathered around her like she was the future because, to them, she was. If you're curious why my replacement panicked the moment she opened one of my files, and why she started calling me non-stop just 2 days later, then go ahead and hit the like button on this video. And I'd really love to know, where are you listening from? What time is it where you are right now? And trust me, what happens next is where things get really interesting. I tightened my grip on the damp cardboard box pressed against my chest. My life reduced to a few notebooks, a coffee mug, and a tangle of charging cables. 3 years of late nights, missed holidays, skipped meals, condensed into something I could barely carry. I caught Daniel Mercer's reflection in the glass, my boss for the past 3 years. He raised his glass slightly higher, his lips curling into something that wasn't quite a smile, even through the rain-streaked window. I could read what he mouthed. "She'll fix your mess." My mess. 3 years, 1,095 days of building something no one else could even begin to understand. Something that worked not because it followed neat, predictable rules, but because I had lived inside it, breathed it, shaped it with instincts no spreadsheet could replicate. And now it was a mess. The guard on my left shifted uncomfortably. "Company protocol," he muttered, not meeting my eyes. I didn't respond. What was there to say? I had given Halcyon Dynamics everything: my time, my energy, my brilliance. I had believed, stupidly, that being indispensable meant being untouchable. As the glass doors shut behind me, and the laughter faded into muffled echoes, a single, quiet realization settled in my chest. I had just been erased. This is a fictional story, with certain details enhanced using AI to make it more engaging, emotionally powerful, and to highlight deeper, meaningful lessons. Take it in, reflect on it, and let it resonate with you. Now, let's continue. I sat in my car for a long time before turning the key. The rain blurred everything outside into streaks of gray and gold, but inside my head, every detail was painfully clear. 3 years, 3 years of my life poured into something no one else even tried to understand. I didn't just build a traffic system, I lived inside it. I studied patterns no one cared to see: how congestion shifted with weather, how human behavior changed at intersections, how emergencies disrupted invisible rhythms across an entire city. I taught myself to think like the system, to anticipate problems before they existed. And it worked. City simulations showed faster response times, smoother traffic flow, fewer accidents. People in meetings had leaned forward when I presented results. Some even called it groundbreaking. I remember one executive saying it could redefine urban mobility entirely, but none of that mattered in the end, because it didn't look the way they expected, because it wasn't clean or traditional or easy to explain in a neat PowerPoint slide. Daniel Mercer had sat across from me earlier that day, fingers steepled like he was discussing something minor, something replaceable. He didn't even sound angry. That was the worst part, just calm, detached. "We're moving in a different direction. Reagan," he said, "a more structured approach, structured, conventional, safe." That's when Vanessa Clark came in. Perfect posture, flawless credentials, Degrees from places that made people nod before she even spoke. She questioned everything I built in meetings. Not because she understood it, but because she didn't. And instead of listening, they listened to her. She brings clarity. Daniel had added, clarity. That was the word they used when they meant control. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just nodded while something inside me folded in on itself, because in that moment, I realized the truth. They didn't replace me because I failed. They replaced me because they couldn't understand me. My apartment felt unfamiliar when I walked in, like a place I had borrowed but never truly lived in. The lights flicked on, revealing the same neat, untouched space I had left that morning. But now it felt hollow in a way I couldn't ignore. There was no one waiting for me, no messages lighting up my phone, no missed calls asking if I was okay. Just silence stretching across the room like it had been there all along, waiting for me to finally notice it. I dropped the box by the door and stood there longer than I should have. It struck me then how little of my life existed outside halcyon dynamics. No plants to water, no pets to greet me, no half-finished hobbies scattered across the table. Just a laptop, a few technical books, and stacks of notebooks filled with equations and ideas no one else had cared to read. I had built everything around that job. Late nights had turned into routine. Weekends blurred into weekdays. Birthdays, holidays, family gatherings, I had skipped them all. Always telling myself there would be time later. Once the system was complete. Once things settled down. Once I proved it worked. Later never came. I sank onto the couch and stared at my phone. Scrolling through contacts I hadn't spoken to in months. Some in years. Conversations that had faded into nothing. People who had stopped reaching out after too many unanswered messages, too many canceled plans. Even my family had learned to expect less of me. The truth settled in slowly, heavier than anything that had happened at the office. I hadn't just lost my job today. I had lost the only thing I had allowed myself to become. Without it, there was no structure, no urgency, no purpose pulling me forward. Just empty hours stretching endlessly ahead, filled with questions I didn't know how to answer. Who was Reagan Cole? Without her work, the silence didn't respond. The first day passed without anything unusual. No calls, no messages, no acknowledgement that I had ever existed inside that building. It was exactly what I expected. They had their new expert now, Vanessa Clark, with her polished confidence and structured approach. The second day was the same. I tried to fill the time, organizing notes I hadn't touched in months, opening books I never had the energy to read before. None of it held my attention for long. My mind kept drifting back to the system, to the countless variables still running in my head like a background process I couldn't shut off. By the third morning, something changed. My phone lit up on the kitchen counter while I was making coffee. A name flashed across the screen. Vanessa Clark. I stared at it, unmoving, letting it ring until it stopped. 3 minutes later, it rang again. Same name. This time, I picked up the phone, turned it over, and watched the screen vibrate against the table without answering. When it finally went silent, I expected that to be the end of it. It wasn't. Another call came, then another. By noon, there were 7 missed calls. By evening, 12. No voicemail, no explanation, just a pattern that was becoming increasingly desperate. I didn't need to hear her voice to understand what was happening. Something wasn't working. That system had never been simple. It wasn't designed to be handed over like a set of instructions or a neatly labeled manual. It required intuition, constant adjustment, a way of thinking that couldn't be documented in bullet points. And Vanessa, she had walked in believing it was just another model to optimize. I leaned back in my chair, watching the city through my window as the sun disappeared behind distant buildings. Traffic lights flickered in uneven rhythms below. Subtle disruptions most people wouldn't notice. But I noticed, because I knew exactly where things would start breaking first. And once it started, it wouldn't stop. The call came the next morning. I almost didn't answer. The number wasn't saved, but something about the timing made me pause. I let it ring twice before picking up, holding the phone loosely against my ear. Reagan, the voice was rushed, almost breathless. It's Mia Chen, the only junior engineer who had survived the team restructuring 6 months ago. I leaned back in my chair, already knowing this wasn't going to be a casual check-in. What's going on? I asked. A sharp inhale came through the line. It's failing. The system, it's actually failing. I closed my eyes for a second, letting her words settle. Define failing. The North Quadrant locked up yesterday afternoon. Completely. Traffic lights froze in conflicting patterns. Cars backed up for miles. And Reagan. Her voice dropped. Ambulances couldn't get through. That landed harder than anything else. They had to reroute emergency calls. She continued quickly. In 3 cases. They dispatched helicopters because ground units were stuck. Vanessa tried to recalibrate using standard parameters, but it made everything worse. It's spreading now. Other sectors are starting to glitch. I didn't say anything. I could hear it in her breathing, in the urgency she was trying to contain. This wasn't a minor issue. This was the beginning of a cascade failure. Elton's losing it, she added. Board members are calling non-stop. The city's threatening to pull the contract if this isn't fixed immediately. Sounds complicated, I said quietly. Complicated, Mia almost laughed, but there was no humor in it. It's a disaster. She doesn't understand how your system adapts. She keeps forcing it into fixed models, and it's breaking everything. Reagan, they need you. I stared at the wall across from me. At nothing in particular. No, I replied calmly. They fired me. There was a pause on the other end. They didn't just fire me, I continued. They replaced me. In the middle of a celebration. People are getting hurt, Mia said, softer now. That was the part I couldn't ignore. Not Elton, not Vanessa, not the board, but the people stuck in that grid. And I knew, with absolute certainty, this was only the beginning. The knock came about an hour later. I already knew who it was before I opened the door. Daniel Mercer stood there, but he didn't look like the man I remembered from the executive floor. His suit was wrinkled, tie loosened, hair slightly out of place. The confidence he usually wore like armor was gone, replaced by something closer to urgency, maybe even desperation. Reagan, he said, forcing a tight smile. Can we talk? I didn't move aside. Why? This is bigger than... What happened? He replied, glancing past me as if the answer might be inside my apartment. We're facing serious technical issues with the system. Vanessa is capable, but there are variables she didn't anticipate. My mess. Right, I asked quietly. His jaw tightened. This isn't the time I saw you. I cut in, through the glass, raising your glass, calling it my mess. Silence stretched between us. The city is in trouble, he said finally, shifting his tone. Emergency services are compromised. This isn't about pride. Reagan, lives are at stake. They always were. I replied. That's why I worked 60-hour weeks while you cut my team. That's why I missed everything outside that building. But none of that mattered when you decided I was too unconventional. He exhaled sharply, then stepped closer. We're prepared to offer you a consulting contract. Triple your previous salary. Full support. Whatever you need. Just help us stabilize it. For a moment, I studied him. The same man who had watched me get escorted out like I didn't belong there. The same man who had already replaced me before I even knew I was leaving. No, I said. Just one word. Simple. Final. His expression hardened. You're letting people suffer because you're angry. No, I corrected calmly. People are suffering because you made a decision you didn't understand. His eyes darkened. I can make sure you never work in this industry again. I almost smiled. Then go ahead, I said. And while you're at it, explain to the board why you fired the only person who knew how that system actually works. He didn't have an answer for that, and for the first time since I'd met him. Daniel Mercer looked completely powerless. If you think I made a mistake walking away, even when they offered me triple the salary, then comment wrong decision. But if you believe I chose self-respect over desperation, and refused to go back to a place that never valued me, then write right decision. Sometimes, the hardest choices aren't about money, they're about knowing your worth. After Daniel left, the apartment felt even quieter than before. His words lingered in the air, mixing with everything Mia had said earlier. I tried to ignore it, to push it aside, but the image wouldn't go away. Ambulances stuck in traffic, people waiting, time slipping through the cracks of a system that was never meant to fail like this. I grabbed my jacket and headed out before I could talk myself out of it. The city didn't look broken at first glance. Cars still moved, people still walked, lights still changed. But the longer I watched, the more the pattern unraveled. Intersections hesitated, traffic signals flickered out of sync. Drivers grew impatient, inching forward at the wrong moments, creating small disruptions that quickly turned into larger ones. At one crossing, I stood still for nearly 5 minutes, waiting for the pedestrian light to change. It never did. Around me, people exchanged frustrated looks before eventually stepping into traffic, risking it because the system had stopped guiding them. That was when it hit me. This wasn't just about a failed project. This was about consequences. Every flawed adjustment Vanessa made, every rigid parameter she forced onto something that required flexibility, it all rippled outward. And the people feeling it weren't executives or board members. They were strangers trying to get home, trying to get to work, trying to survive emergencies that couldn't wait. I walked past a cluster of news vans near City Hall, reporters speaking urgently into cameras. Words like gridlock crisis and system failure carried through the air. The situation was already spiraling beyond control. I stopped at the corner and looked down the street. Watching the uneven flow I knew so well. I could fix this. That thought came without hesitation. But fixing it for them, for Halcyon Dynamics, that was something else entirely. I wasn't going back to the way things were. If I stepped in, it would be on my terms. And this time, I wouldn't let anyone take control of what I built. The message came the next morning from an unknown number, just an address, a time, and a name, Mayor Evelyn Grant. I stared at the screen longer than I expected. Neutral location, no company involvement, no corporate language, just a direct request. That alone told me everything I needed to know. The cafe was quiet when I arrived, tucked away from the noise of downtown. She was already there, sitting at a corner table, her posture straight, but her expression tired. The kind of tired that didn't come from lack of sleep, but from carrying too much responsibility for too long. Reagan Cole, she said as I approached, standing to shake my hand. Thank you for coming. I haven't agreed to anything, I replied. Taking a seat. I know, she said calmly. But you're here. A server placed coffee in front of us, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she leaned forward slightly, her voice lowering. The city is struggling, she said. Emergency response times have increased by nearly 40%. We've already had incidents that could have ended differently if your system had been functioning. My system didn't fail. I said, I'm aware. She replied without hesitation. It's being mismanaged. That caught my attention. She continued. Your former company assured us the transition would be seamless. It clearly wasn't. And now they're considering shutting the system down entirely. A sharp discomfort settled in my chest at that. You saw what it could do, she added. You built something extraordinary. I don't want to lose that because of poor decisions made after you were removed. I wrapped my hands around the cup, letting the warmth ground me. What exactly are you asking? I said. I want you to fix it. She answered. Not through them. Through us. Directly. I looked at her carefully. They own the system, I said. They licensed it to the city, she replied. And right now, they're in breach of contract. That was the opening. If I do this, I said slowly, I do it my way. Full control, no interference. My name on everything design, implementation, documentation, and I choose my own team. She didn't hesitate. Done. That was the moment everything shifted. For the first time since I walked out of that building, I wasn't reacting anymore. I was taking control. The board meeting was already underway when I arrived. I didn't walk in immediately. Instead, I sat just outside the glass-walled conference room. Watching, Daniel Mercer stood at the head of the table, presenting graphs, pointing to failures, his voice steady and controlled. Even from a distance, I could read the narrative he was building. Blame the system, blame me. Vanessa sat beside him, hands clasped tightly. She looked different now, less polished, less certain. When she finally stood up, something shifted, the room stilled. Daniel tried to interrupt, but the chairman raised a hand, silencing him. Vanessa spoke, and this time, she didn't defend herself. She told them the truth. The system wasn't flawed. It was never meant to be forced into rigid models. The failure wasn't in the design. It was in the way they tried to control it without understanding it. That was when the door opened. Every head turned as I stepped inside. Reagan Cole. The chairman said slowly, "I've accepted a consulting role with the city." I replied, "Effective immediately." Confusion spread across the room. The city has invoked its contractual rights. I continued calmly, "And I'll be restoring the system under my own direction." For the first time, they weren't in control anymore. 72 hours. That was all it took. Once I had full access again, everything fell back into place, not because it was simple, but because I understood it in a way no one else did. I rebuilt the adaptive layers they had stripped away, recalibrated the behavioral patterns, restored the balance they had disrupted, and then it worked. Traffic began to flow again. Emergency routes cleared in real time. The chaos that had swallowed the city slowly unraveled, replaced by a rhythm that felt almost invisible unless you knew where to look. The mayor held a press conference the following day. My name was mentioned clearly this time, Reagan Cole, the architect behind the system that had restored order. No more silence, no more being erased. Offers started coming in almost immediately, but that wasn't the part that mattered. A month later, I walked past Halcyon Dynamics on my way to City Hall. Through the glass lobby, I saw employees packing up their desks, boxes stacked where workstations used to be. The city contract, their biggest project, was gone. Daniel Mercer stood near the entrance, staring at what was left. For a brief second, our eyes met. I didn't stop. I didn't smile, because this was never about destroying them. It was about proving they were never the reason I succeeded. Sometimes, the moment you feel most rejected is actually the moment you're being redirected towards something greater. This story isn't just about losing a job, it's about reclaiming your worth, standing firm in your value, and realizing that the right path often begins where comfort ends. From everything that happened, I took away 5 powerful lessons. First, never shrink your abilities just to fit into someone else's understanding. Second, being irreplaceable doesn't mean you'll be treated that way. Know your value anyway. Third, the wrong environment will label your strengths as flaws. Fourth, true power comes when you stop seeking approval and start taking control. Fifth, the best response to being underestimated is not revenge, but undeniable results. And you? What lesson did you take from this story? I'd genuinely love to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below. If this story meant something to you, don't just scroll past it. Like, share, and subscribe, not just to support the channel, but to help spread a message that might inspire someone else to stand up for themselves. Sometimes, your small action can make a big difference.
Welcome to Boardroom Revenge Stories, a channel focused on workplace conflict, corporate betrayal, power struggles, and quiet justice. Our stories follow a structured workflow to deliver a consistent, immersive experience. We start by analyzing real discussions on Reddit, Facebook, Quora, and blogs. Next, we craft original scripts using AI tools like ChatGPT. We then use 11 Labs to transform text into high-quality voice and edit everything in CapCut for a smooth, cinematic finish. Thumbnails are designed with Canva, and every video is carefully reviewed before release. These stories go beyond entertainment, revealing how power truly works and how justice quietly unfolds.